Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Marvel Contest of Champions. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment. All right. So today we're going to continue our series of 1, who should we awaken? And 2, who should we spend Sig Stones on within those Awaken champs? And today we're going to look at the top 10 mutants for that. So here is my list right here. Mutant champs that should be awakened. Again, remember, these are the top 10 that should be awakened. And then after that, we'll talk about who out of these top 10 should have Sig Stones put on them. So they're not going to be in the same order. And then I've got some honorable mention mutant champs to awaken after this. So number 1 is Strife. So let's go to Aunt May, and we'll look at Strife. Where is Strife? There he is right there. Number 1 to awaken is Strife. So Strife gets one super fantastic ability that he doesn't have when he is not awakened. And that's the third one. Winning a fight converts 31 to 70% of telepathic charges into persistent telepathic charge. Everything he does is based off of telepathic charges, and this makes him the Aegon version of mutants. So he gets his telepathic charges, and then he can carry them into the next fight. In addition, when gaining telepathic charges from any source other than his ability, so he's got a couple other ways to get telepathic charges. He's got up to a 20% chance to gain another one. Can't do that. So again, everything is about telepathic charges. And then whenever causing a basic attack to glance. So he's got certain ways to cause basic attacks to glance. Strife has a 10 to 40% chance to activate his special 1 invisibility for 3 seconds, which is essentially going to make the opponent miss. These 3 abilities are very important to his kit, but particularly the third one where he gets persistent telepathic charges. So that is why he needs to be awakened, so that you can get that ability. All right, let's go to the next one. Number 2 is Kitty Pryde. So let's take a look at Kitty. Where is Kitty Pryde? Kitty Pryde is right here. Okay. So, 1, while phasing, you take no damage. So, without that, take 80% reduced damage. So, that's super important, not to have to take any damage while you're phased versus having to take 80% damage. And the reason that this becomes important is if your opponent uses a special 3 on you and you're phasing, they will do no damage. That's super important. Otherwise, if you're phasing and you're not awakened and the opponent does a special 3 on you, you will take damage and could take a substantial amount of damage. Secondly, while phased, Kitty gains 100 to 250% defensive combat power rate and pauses phasing while being struck. So if you go phase and the opponent starts attacking you, because the phase does last a couple of seconds, doesn't last as long as Ghost's phase, but her phasing from her special 3 does last pretty long. So she will get power. That's another really important thing, because her specials are where her damage is, because she gets so many prowesses. The first time each personal incinerate effect expires naturally or is purified, it has a 20 to 40% chance to re-trigger itself at 30% potency. So it's even more, or plus 30% potency. And these are always passive. So that's another really important thing that you don't get when you are not awakened. And her incinerates are pretty important to her kit. Because her incinerate meter doesn't go down as long as the opponent has an incinerate. So with this, you can keep those incinerates going, especially if you're high Sig, and then you can keep that incinerate meter going, and it triggers after you use your special 1 or special 3. You can keep it going, and that actually makes the incinerates do more damage. So it's really important to have her awaken. You get all that stuff. Okay, who is number 3? Red Magneto. Or Magneto, just Magneto. But it's Red Mag. We all call him Red Magneto. Okay, so what does he get? When attacked, his mutation reaches Omega level, and it prevents him from losing more than, if he's max sig, 4,625 health from any single damage source, excluding damage from a special 3. So if your opponent uses a special 2, then it's capped at 4,625. And you can see here a rank 4 6-star has 46,000 points. So that means like a 2 or 3, let's say a 3-hit special 2 will only do about 13,000 points of damage. He's still going to have a lot of his health left. Okay, so secondly, he also gains up to a 244 crit resistance and block penetration, and this attribute bonus is increased by 100%. So that is crit resistance and block penetration. Block penetration is the big one. So he can attack into the opponent and do more damage. Lastly, and this is a pretty big one because Magneto is all about Red Magneto is all about his heavy attacks, because his heavy attacks give him prowesses. He will do a burst of 3,227 energy damage, in addition to doing damage with the heavy attack and getting the prowesses. The big one is it's capping off that health. That's a big one. All right, who is next? Colossus is next. And here is Colossus. So Colossus essentially has to be awakened for you to get use out of him. And for him to do like the big damage and to really be able to take a lot of damage himself. So whenever one of Colossus' immunity protects him from an effect like an Incinerate or a Bleed, if he would take Bleed, this happens. If he takes Incinerate, this happens. He has a 25 to 52% chance to gain an armor up buff lasting 15 seconds. That's a biggie. So if you go on a node that's like Caltrops, or you go on a node that is like Biohazard, where you're going to take bleed damage for doing certain things, he will rack up armor ups like you've never seen before. Secondly, Colossus has an 18 to 45% chance to convert any expiring armor up buff into a permanent one. So all those buffs that you might get from the first signature ability can be converted over into permanent armor up buffs. And then whenever he parries anything, he gets an armor up buff, and that can get converted over. And whenever he does a special 1, he gets one. That's a permanent one. But when he does a special 2, he gets a bunch of temporary ones, which all can convert over. The more armor up buffs he gets, the more damage he can take, and the more armor up buffs he gets, the more damage he does. So it's all about the armor ups and all about keeping the armor ups. So this is really important to get him awakened. Okay, Omega Red is number 5. There he is right there. Omega Red. Okay, first off, Death Spores on the opponent deal damage per second. Each Death Spore does damage. So normally his Death Spores do not do damage. If you look at his basic kit, he has a passive factor, which is bleed immune and all that. He's got a death factor. Each Death Spore lowers the opponent's armor rating. But they don't actually do damage. They only do damage if his death field is up. So even if his death field is down, they only do up to 129 damage per second for each Death Spore. This is increased to up to 2,874 damage per second. So that's a big difference. Secondly, and this is another really important thing that he gets that he doesn't have on his base kit, is his tentacle attacks have a chance to be unblockable, which means you could, because you have to be super aggressive with him to begin with. You can afford to be aggressive with him because you could break the block of an opponent and start hitting them and not have to worry about retaliation. Okay, who is next? Archangel is next. We're going to go all the way down so you can see who it is. So Archangel is next. All right, let's take a look at Archangel. Where is Archangel? He is number 2 on the list. Okay. Archangel's all about the neurotoxin. Everything he does is about neurotoxin and trying to get a neurotoxin on your opponent. So what happens when his signature ability goes? The neurotoxin charge causes up to a 40% reduction in ability accuracy and preventing the opponent from gaining health. So if you've got that maxed out, they cannot activate any defensive abilities, regenerations. That stuff will not activate. So it's really, and it starts out at 25%, which is really, really good. So not only are the neurotoxins going to do damage, but the neurotoxins are also going to prevent armor ups or health gain or anything like that, including evades, because that's an ability accuracy. So that's all super, super important to have on him. All right, who is next? Storm, and this is the OG Storm. I know this is a little bit of a controversial one, but I really like the new Storm, and she has so much damage potential. So with her signature ability, launching a special attack grants 1 prowess buff per level of the special attack. So if you launch a special 2, you get 2 prowesses. Additionally, each prowess on Storm to a maximum of 10 increases the potency of her shock debuffs 8 to 18%, which means if we have 10 prowesses on Storm, we get a increase to the potency of a shock of 180%. Okay, so when does she do shocks? She does shocks on her special 1. I don't believe she doesn't do them. She does a stun on her special 2, and she does not do them on a special 3. But she does do them on a special 1, and so each hit from the special 1 has a 70% chance of inflicting a shock, causing 1,786 damage over 6 seconds. If the opponent is stunned, the shock becomes 100%, and all shocks on the opponent are paused for 6 seconds. So you can keep shocks going for a long, long time with her. And if you got the signature ability, that 1796 now becomes about 4,000 points of energy damage over 6 seconds. It gets really ridiculous. You can do a lot, and you can keep them going. And it's each hit, each one does that. So you can really, really rack up damage with her. Without it, you can't do this. You just can't do it. So you really have to have her. Okay. Now, who is next? White Magneto. All right. So what does he get? The biggest thing, and this is what White Magneto is all about because he's a support character, is his persistent charge. So knocking an opponent out grants an additional persistent charge. And I believe he starts with 2 persistent charges, and then you want to be able to get more. So, and he's actually not bad. He's not bad as a character. He's not as good as Red Magneto, but he is pretty good. In addition, Magneto's bleed and armor break debuffs gain up to an 80% duration based on how much special damage he's gaining from prowess effects. Max potency at 150 prowess. So he gets prowesses when he does certain things. And then in addition, he'll get this. So it makes his special 1 and special 2 so much better. And he gets the persistent charges, which is the really important thing. All right, who is next? Iceman. Iceman is next. All right, so Iceman, when he is awakened, gets absolute 0. So he causes his opponent to start the fight with a cold snap, dealing up to 8,208 energy damage over 12 seconds, and prevents them from evade. That's the big one, because he doesn't get this if he's not awakened. Additionally, he can reform his ice armor 3 seconds faster, which is important, because his ice armor is part of his kind of like his tank kit that he has. But the big one is the energy damage that they immediately start out with, and the fact that evade attacks don't work. So Spidey's doesn't matter. Mixmaster doesn't matter. So he can go through all of that. All right, last is Sunspot. Sunspot is all about solar charges, and he starts out with a certain number of solar charges, and then every time he puts an incinerate on his opponent, he starts to lose solar charges. And you can double those up when you use your special 1, but he'll lose 2 solar charges at a time. I think it's every second. So you can increase the maximum number of solar charges with his signature ability so that you can do more damage with all of his special abilities, which, again, very important. Okay, now let's talk about a few honorable mentions. So I put Bishop in here as an honorable mention because he gets certain things with certain bars of power. So when he's at 0 power, when he has 10 prowesses, he gets unblockable attacks. And that scales down to 10 from a larger number as your signature levels go up. At 1 bar of power, because he has power memory, so he can start with 1 bar of power at the beginning of the fight. At 1 bar of power, he gets stun immunity and up to a minus 80% on the opponent's ability accuracy. That's really cool. When he starts with 2 bars of power, his specials all incinerate for up to 70% of his damage. And this is a big one. 3 bars of power, he gets steady release active, I believe, on all of his specials for up to 15 seconds. That, or I think it might actually just stay on. That is amazing because that's the one that starts racking up incinerates on the opponent. All right. Second is Professor X. So his signature ability, while below 75 side charges, he gains 1 per second. Double rate when defending, and he gets up to a plus 50% prowess potency. Not the greatest, but it does help his kid out a lot. Emma Frost is 4th in honorable mentions. She gets the reverse controls with any of her specials. And when she's in telepath form, she can turn into a diamond from down to 5 when she takes down to 5% health. And that it starts out at a lower number and goes lower as she gets up in sig levels. Lastly is Gambit. So Gambit's flak jacket can absorb an additional up to 9,079 damage, and his prowess grant an additional up to 116 crit damage each. So that starts low and then goes up to 116. So that's actually pretty good. Gambit's not the greatest in the world, but that's okay. All right. So last thing we want to talk about is who do we want, now that we've awakened our champs, who deserves the Sig Stones the most? So number 1 on my list is Omega Red. So remember when we said that Omega Red, his death spores do damage when he's awakened. His death spores will do up to 2,874 damage per second each. So you could really rack up damage. I mean, I've seen 3,000 points per second. I mean, it's just a horrendous number. And then tentacle attacks have up to a 30% chance to be unblockable. That means if you're hitting the opponent, I think he gets 3 tentacle attacks per 5 combo, and that means one of those could possibly break through the block. Really important for his whole kit since you have to be so aggressive with him. He has a little bit different of a play style because you have to remain close to the opponent to get the death spores on him. Okay, second is Colossus. When Colossus is full sig, he's got a 52% chance to gain an armor up when an immunity triggers. And those armor ups last for 15 seconds. And he's got up to a 45% chance to convert expiring armor ups up to permanent ones. You want those maxed out as much as possible. Strife, the reason that you max Strife out is to get that 70% of telepathic charges to persist between fights. So if I've got 5, let's say I've got 5 or 6, then I'll end up with 3 or 4 going into the next fight. So that's really important. Archangel, we want that reduction in the ability accuracy and prevention of health regain as high as possible, 40%. He's number 4. Number 5, we want the extra shock damage for each prowess on Storm to be as high as possible. 18% get you, Sig 200 gets you 18%. All right, number 6 for Sig Stones. Kitty Pryde takes no damage again, but she gets to up to 250% defensive combat power rate. So you can see her bar of power just click over every time she gets hit while she is phased, and you really want that to be like that so you can keep basically spamming special 3s. And then you want that incinerate chance to re-trigger or reignite up as high as possible, and a 40% chance is really good because you could put 5 or 6 incinerates on, and one of those is going to re-up every single time and allows you to put more and more on and keep them going. White Magneto, bleed and armor break up to 80% duration, so you can keep the bleeds going. Red Magneto, he's lower on my list because it just causes the single source damage to go down, but his energy damage does go up for heavies. Iceman, he gets more damage with the cold snap. And lastly is Sunspot. He gets up to 40. So you want all these guys to be as high sig as possible. You're going to awaken them, and then start spending sig stones on them after they're awakened. It goes in this order: Omega Red, Colossus, Strife, Archangel, Storm, Kitty Pryde, White Magneto, Red Magneto, Iceman, and lastly, Sunspot. All right. That is what I have for you today. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, leave a question or comment, and I will catch everybody later.